The most expensive signing of the transfer window is supposed to be the one that changes everything.
£100 million, a British record transfer fee.
A statement of intent, a player so good that clubs are willing to break the bank, shatter transfer records, and bet their entire project on one name. But football history has proven over and over again that the price tag means absolutely nothing, because more often than not, the player who actually ends up defining a generation wasn't the record breaker. It was somebody else, somebody quieter, somebody cheaper, sometimes embarrassingly cheaper. So today, we're going head-to-head, the most expensive signing from every summer transfer window since 2015 versus the player who actually turned out to be the best. And trust me, some of these will genuinely make you question how professional football clubs with billion-dollar budgets and entire scouting departments manage to get it so spectacularly wrong. Let's start. In the summer of 2015, Manchester City made Raheem Sterling the most expensive English player in history at that point, paying Liverpool £49 million for a 20-year-old winger. And look, Sterling hasn't had a bad career by any stretch. Multiple Premier League titles, consistent goal contributions, and he was a key piece in City's early Guardiola era. But Sterling was never the transformative signing of this window. That title belongs to a player who cost 10 times less. N'Golo Kanté arrived at Leicester City from Cannes for £5.6 million. 5.6. Nobody outside of French football even knew who this guy was. He was 24, barely 5'6", and had spent his career in the lower divisions of League One. And then he just casually won the Premier League in his first season in England, covering every blade of grass on the pitch and becoming the engine behind the greatest underdog story football has ever seen. The following summer, he moved to Chelsea and won it again, making him the first outfield player since Eric Cantona to win back-to-back Premier League titles with different clubs. He'd go on to add a Champions League title, 2 Premier League Player of the Year awards, and a World Cup winner's medal for under £6 million. Some clubs spend more than that on a backup goalkeeper. Summer 2016 brought us the blockbuster of blockbusters. Manchester United smashed the world transfer record to bring Paul Pogba back to Old Trafford for £89 million. The marketing campaign was insane. The hype was through the roof.
I just went for a holiday. It looks like I went for a holiday. I just go back, I come back home, I'm happy.
And Pogba did have moments at United, a League Cup and Europa League, some genuinely world-class performances. But if we're being honest, Pogba never consistently became the player United paid for. Injuries, inconsistency, public fallouts with managers, and eventually a free transfer exit followed by a doping ban, the Pogba era at United will always feel like unfulfilled potential. Meanwhile, Liverpool quietly signed Sadio Mané from Southampton for £34 million. Mané immediately became the catalyst for everything Jurgen Klopp was building at Anfield. His pace, pressing, and clinical finishing turned Liverpool's front three into the most terrifying attack in Europe.
Henderson round the corner. Sadio Mané!
Champions League winner, Premier League champion, African Footballer of the Year, Mané delivered everything Pogba was supposed to at less than half the price. This is the window that broke football. Paris Saint-Germain activated Neymar's €222 million release clause at Barcelona, more than doubling the previous world record in a single transaction. It was the transfer that changed the entire market overnight. Every fee after this suddenly felt reasonable by comparison.
I was never motivated by money. What I think is about my happiness. If I was following the money, I would be maybe somewhere else.
And listen, Neymar is obviously a generational talent. Nobody's questioning that. The skill, the flair, the moments of pure brilliance, all of that was real. But his time at PSG was defined more by injuries, missed Champions League knockout games, off-the-pitch distractions, and the constant "will he go back to Barcelona" saga. than by actual trophies that matched the investment. PSG wanted a Champions League. They poured $222 million into making it happen. They still don't have one. That same summer, Liverpool signed Mohamed Salah from Roma for £34 million.
I'm very excited, and I can say I will give 100%.
A player Chelsea had given up on a few years earlier. A player most people expected to be a decent squad option, maybe a useful rotation winger. All Salah did was break the Premier League single-season goal record in his first year with 32 goals, win the Golden Boot 3 times, lead Liverpool to a Champions League title and a Premier League title, and establish himself as arguably the best player in the world for multiple seasons running. £34 million. That might be the greatest piece of transfer business in the history of the sport. And it happened the same summer. A club spent 6 times more and got 6 times less. Summer 2018 gave us one of the wildest goalkeeper battles in transfer history. Chelsea made Kepa Arrizabalaga the most expensive goalkeeper ever at €80 million. What followed was one of the most painful transfer stories in modern football. Kepa's save percentage, his command of the box, his overall performances, none of it justified anywhere near that price tag. He was eventually benched, loaned out, and became the textbook example of panic buying. That same window, Liverpool signed Alisson Becker from Roma for £67 million. Same position, same window. Completely opposite outcomes. Alisson instantly transformed Liverpool's defense, won the Champions League in his first season, the Premier League in his second, and established himself as one of the 2 best goalkeepers in the world for years. 2 clubs, 2 goalkeepers, 2 very different stories. This is the window that still haunts Real Madrid. They paid upwards of €100 million to bring Eden Hazard from Chelsea. It was supposed to be the start of a new Galactico era. The presentation at the Bernabeu had 50,000 fans in the stadium.
Hola a todos.
Hazard himself said it was his dream since childhood, and then everything fell apart. Hazard arrived overweight, picked up injury after injury, played through pain when he shouldn't have, and scored just 7 goals across 4 miserable seasons. He spent more time in the medical room than on the pitch. By the time he retired, he'd barely played a full 90 minutes in a Madrid shirt. It might genuinely be the worst big-money transfer of all time. €100 million, 7 goals. Let that sink in. While Madrid were lighting money on fire, a quiet deal was happening in Austria that nobody was paying attention to. Erling Haaland moved from Molde to Red Bull Salzburg for around €5 million. Within months, he scored a hat-trick on his Champions League debut at 19 years old, and the entire footballing world collectively lost their minds.
The first half hat-trick! Erling Brett Haaland!
Within 2 years, he was at Dortmund breaking records. Within 3, he was at Manchester City scoring 36 Premier League goals in a single season and winning the treble. All of it, every single goal, every record, every trophy, it all started with a €5 million transfer in a window where everyone was talking about Hazard. That is the gap between the most expensive and the best. The pandemic window was strange, but Chelsea still found a way to spend aggressively. Kai Havertz arrived from Bayer Leverkusen for around €80 million as the centerpiece of their rebuild. And to Havertz's credit, he did score the winning goal in the Champions League final. That alone justifies a lot, but across his full Chelsea spell, the consistency was never quite there. He eventually moved to Arsenal and has settled into a solid but not spectacular role. At $80 million, Chelsea expected more. That same summer, a 17-year-old Jude Bellingham left Birmingham City for Borussia Dortmund for €25 million.
One of English football's most exciting talents, Jude Bellingham, has signed for Borussia Dortmund for an initial £25 million.
Within 3 years, Bellingham had become the most complete young midfielder in world football, moved to Real Madrid and immediately won the Champions League, while scoring goals at a rate midfielders simply aren't supposed to. Ballon d'Or nominee at 20 years old. 25 million. Clubs were still paying more for squad rotation players. Manchester City made Jack Grealish the first £100 million player in Premier League history.
£100 million, a British record transfer fee.
And Grealish has won multiple league titles at City, so the trophies are there. But purely in terms of individual impact, Grealish has never been a regular starter under Guardiola, rarely hits double figures in goals or assists, and hasn't come close to justifying the price tag with his on-pitch output. He's a good player in a great team, but at $100 million, good isn't what you're paying for. The best signing of this window flew completely under the radar at the time. Aurélien Tchouaméni? No, it was actually Achraf Hakimi, who moved from Inter Milan to PSG for around 60 million euros and immediately became one of the best right-backs on the planet, a position where truly elite players are almost impossible to find. His pace, his attacking output, his defensive recovery, Hakimi has been PSG's most consistent performer across multiple seasons and one of the most complete fullbacks we've seen in years. This is one of the rare cases where the story flips completely. Liverpool signed Darwin Núñez from Benfica for up to £85 million, making him the most expensive signing of the window.
Mira, estuve aquí en esta época, he ganado trofeos, títulos, y eso es a lo que vine a Liverpool.
And while Núñez has had moments, incredible moments even, the inconsistency has been staggering. One game, he looks like a world beater. The next, he's missing open goals. That would make a Sunday League striker blush. The missed chances, the red cards, the general chaos of his playing style, it all added up to a player who's never fully delivered on that price tag. Liverpool fans have spent years trying to decide whether they love him or whether he's driving them insane. It's probably both. Meanwhile, Manchester City triggered Erling Haaland's €51 million release clause from Borussia Dortmund. A release clause for a player who then scored 36 league goals in his debut season, broke the all-time Premier League goal record, and won the treble in his first year. Haaland didn't just justify his fee, he made it look like theft. The fact that he cost less than Núñez might be the single most ridiculous stat in modern transfer history. This one doesn't need any further explanation. Arsenal broke their transfer record to sign Declan Rice from West Ham for £105 million. And unlike most of the expensive signings on this list, this one actually worked. Rice immediately slotted into Arsenal's midfield, brought leadership, defensive solidity, and a growing offensive game that made Arsenal genuine title contenders. This is probably the best example we've seen of the most expensive signing and the best signing being the same player. It does happen sometimes, just not very often. In the summer of 2024, Kylian Mbappé finally completed his long-awaited free transfer to Real Madrid. Zero transfer fee. But with signing bonuses, loyalty payments, and wages reportedly north of €30 million a year, this was easily the most expensive overall deal of the window. The whole world had been waiting for this move for years. This was supposed to be the moment Mbappé stepped into the shoes of Cristiano Ronaldo and became the face of Real Madrid for the next decade. And for a while, things looked really rocky. Mbappé's first season at the Bernabeu was full of adjustment struggles, positional clashes with Vinicius Jr., and growing questions about whether two ball-dominant wingers could actually coexist. He finished the season with decent numbers on paper, but by his own stratospheric standards and by Real Madrid's expectations, it left a lot to be desired. The jury is still very much out on whether this becomes the Galactico move Madrid dreamed of, or another cautionary tale about superstars arriving and never quite clicking. Time will tell. So, what did we learn from all of this? The most expensive signing is supposed to be the safe bet. The guaranteed franchise changer, the one name that makes your rivals nervous. But football keeps proving window after window, that the price tag and the actual impact are two completely different things. For every Declan Rice who actually justified the fee, there's a Kepa, a Hazard, or a Pogba who remind you that money doesn't buy chemistry, consistency, or hunger. It never has, and it never will. And on the other side, for every record-breaking deal, there's a Kanté for 5.6 million, a Salah for 34, or a Haaland for a release clause that nobody bothered to compete for. The best signings in football aren't always the loudest. They're the ones that nobody saw coming, the ones that pundits ignored on deadline day, the ones that only make sense looking back. At the end of the day, the transfer window is football's biggest gamble, just like the draft in basketball. Sometimes the smartest move isn't spending the most. It's knowing what everyone else is missing. And right now, somewhere in Europe, there's a player worth $5 million that's going to change the game forever. We just don't know his name yet.